The morning briefing at Whitmore Air Force Base should have been routine. Instead, Captain Lucia Rivera found herself standing before 30 hostile faces in Briefing Room Alpha, each pair of eyes carrying the same unspoken message: you don't belong here. Major Brad Thomson leaned back in his chair at the front of the room, his arms crossed as he delivered what he called constructive feedback, but what everyone else recognized as public humiliation. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Rivera, your flight response times are consistently 2 seconds slower than Squadron standards, Thomson announced, his voice carrying across the silent room. In combat situations, those 2 seconds could mean the difference between bringing your wingman home or attending his memorial service. A few snickers rippled through the assembled pilots of Squadron 47, the Desert Hawks. Thomson's eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he continued. Maybe you'd be more comfortable in transport operations. Less pressure, fewer lives depending on split-second decisions. Lucia stood perfectly still, her flight suit crisp despite having been awake since 400 hours running diagnostics on her F-16. Her dark hair was pulled back in regulation style, and her posture remained military straight, even as the weight of 30 disapproving stares pressed down on her shoulders. She had faced this same scenario dozens of times over the past 8 months since her transfer to the Desert Hawks, but today felt different. Today, something in Thomson's tone suggested this wasn't just another training critique. "Sir," my response. "Times have improved by 12% over the past month," she replied evenly, her voice carrying the controlled calm that had served her well through 12 years of military service. "Additionally, my fuel efficiency ratings exceed squadron averages by 15%, and my weapon systems accuracy scores rank in the top 10% of the unit." Thomson's expression hardened. He stood up slowly, his 6'2" frame towering over the podium as he fixed Lucia with a stare that had intimidated countless junior officers. "Statistics don't win dogfights, Captain. Heart does. Instinct does. The killer mentality that separates real fighter pilots from desk jockeys wearing flight suits." His words hung in the air like ordnance waiting to detonate. "Some people have it. Some people pretend they have it. And some people need to accept that they're better suited for roles that don't require other people to trust them with their lives." The room fell into absolute silence. Even the constant hum of the base's electrical system seemed to fade as every person present recognized the line that had just been crossed. This wasn't professional critique anymore. This was character assassination, delivered with surgical precision in front of Lucia's peers and subordinates. Lucia felt her jaw tighten almost imperceptibly, but her expression remained neutral. 12 years of service had taught her that reactions in moments like these define careers and reputations. She had survived worse challenges than Major Brad Thomson, though none quite so public or calculated. "Understood, sir," she said simply, her voice betraying nothing of the storm building behind her steady gaze. What Thomson and the other members of Squadron 47 didn't know was that they had just challenged a woman whose quiet demeanor masked a combat record that would have impressed even the most decorated veterans among them. They saw someone who spoke softly in briefings and kept to herself during off-duty hours. They didn't see the officer who had earned her wings in the top 5% of her flight training class, or the pilot who had completed 3 combat deployments with distinction before anyone in this room had even heard of the Desert Hawks. Captain Lucia Rivera had arrived at Whitmore Air Force Base on a Tuesday morning in March, her transfer orders crisp in her hand and her expectations cautiously optimistic. The Desert Hawks had a reputation as one of the most elite fighter squadrons in the Air Force, known for their precision in close air support missions and their tight-knit brotherhood. What the official documents and glowing recommendations hadn't mentioned was that this brotherhood had very specific ideas about who belonged in their ranks. Her background should have commanded immediate respect. Lucia had spent the previous 4 years stationed at Ramstein Air Base in Germany, where she flew escort missions for high-value transport aircraft through some of the most contested airspace in Eastern Europe. Before that, she had completed 2 tours in Afghanistan, providing close air support for ground forces in mountainous terrain that challenged even the most experienced pilots. Her service record included 3 air medals, a Distinguished Flying Cross, and commendations from 3 different commanding officers, who praised her tactical thinking and cool performance under pressure. None of that seemed to matter to Squadron 47. From her first day at Whitmore, Lucia encountered a culture that viewed her presence as an unwelcome experiment in political correctness rather than a valuable addition to their operational capability. The squadron's 12 pilots had worked together for an average of 3 years, developing the kind of intuitive communication and mutual trust that made them devastatingly effective in combat situations. They had also developed an insular mentality that treated newcomers with suspicion and female newcomers with outright hostility. Major Thomson set the tone from their first meeting. He was a 15-year veteran with an impressive combat record and a personality that demanded absolute loyalty from his subordinates. His leadership style relied heavily on intimidation and public challenges, techniques that had proven effective with the young male pilots who made up the majority of his command. When those same techniques failed to rattle Lucia, Thomson interpreted her composure as indifference rather than professionalism. The squadron's living quarters reflected their exclusive mentality. Lucia found herself assigned to a single room in the visiting officers' quarters, rather than the squadron housing where the other pilots lived in pairs. When she inquired about the arrangement, she was told that her permanent housing assignment was still being processed. After 6 weeks of sleeping in what was essentially a hotel room, while watching newer arrivals move directly into squadron housing, she stopped asking about the status of her paperwork. Squadron social events presented another layer of exclusion. The Desert Hawks maintained a tradition of Friday evening gatherings at the Falcon's Nest, the base's officer club, where they would debrief the week's training missions over drinks and plan weekend activities. Lucia attended the first few gatherings, hoping to build relationships with her new squadron mates. Instead, she found herself standing alone at the bar, while conversations died when she approached groups and resumed when she moved away. The exclusion extended to professional opportunities as well. Squadron 47 prided itself on cross-training exercises with special operations units, joint missions with international allies, and advanced tactical training programs that enhanced both individual skills and unit cohesion. These assignments were distributed based on what Thomson called merit and readiness, but they seemed to correlate more closely with personal relationships and squadron politics than with objective performance measures. Lucia watched as newer pilots with less experience but better social connections received opportunities to train with Navy SEALs, participate in NATO exercises in Europe, and attend advanced weapons systems courses at Nellis Air Force Base. She submitted requests for similar training opportunities. They disappeared into administrative limbo or were denied due to scheduling conflicts that mysteriously resolved themselves when male pilots expressed interest in the same programs. The Penju, scheduling conflicts that mysteriously resolved themselves when male pilots expressed interest in the same programs. The daily flight schedule reflected the same pattern of systematic exclusion. Lucia found herself assigned to solo training missions and routine patrol flights while the rest of the squadron practiced complex formation maneuvers and mock combat scenarios. When she was included in group exercises, she was typically given support roles that kept her away from the primary action. During post-flight debriefings, her tactical suggestions were dismissed without consideration, while similar ideas from male pilots sparked detailed discussions and implementation plans. Thomson's critique sessions became increasingly personal. As the months progressed, he would focus on minor technical points in Lucia's performance while ignoring identical issues in other pilots' flights. Her radio communications were too formal, he claimed, suggesting a lack of trust in her squadron mates. Her fuel management was too conservative, indicating insufficient aggression. Her weapon systems checks were too thorough, demonstrating an obsessive personality that could compromise mission flexibility. The psychological pressure was carefully calculated and relentlessly applied. Thomson understood that breaking the strong-willed officer required sustained pressure applied from multiple directions. He enlisted Sergeant Kyle Henderson, his most loyal subordinate, to spread rumors about Lucia's capabilities and commitment throughout the squadron. Henderson had a talent for planting seeds of doubt disguised as concerned observations. He would mention Lucia's slower integration into squadron culture during informal conversations, suggest that her previous assignments might not have prepared her for the Desert Hawk's operational tempo, and question whether her combat experience had been gained in sufficiently challenging environments. The campaign of professional isolation was particularly effective because it operated within the bounds of military protocol while achieving clearly personal objectives. Thomson never issued direct orders to exclude Lucia, but his preferences were understood and implemented by subordinates eager to maintain their standing in the squadron hierarchy. The result was a workplace environment that felt increasingly hostile while remaining technically compliant with equal opportunity regulations and professional conduct standards. Lucia's response to this treatment revealed the depth of her character and the quality of her military training. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Rather than confronting the situation directly or filing formal complaints that could be dismissed as personality conflicts, she focused on improving her own performance to levels that would be impossible to ignore or criticize. She arrived at the flight line earlier than anyone else, stayed later to review technical manuals and flight recordings, and maintained aircraft readiness standards that exceeded even the squadron's demanding requirements. Her approach to the social isolation was equally methodical. Instead of forcing herself into unwelcoming social situations, Lucia used her off-duty time to build relationships with other units on the base. She volunteered for cross-training exercises with the base security forces, offered technical assistance to maintenance crews working on complex aircraft systems, and participated in base-wide community service projects that brought her into contact with personnel from various departments and specializations. These relationships proved valuable in unexpected ways. Master Sergeant Rodriguez, the head of aircraft maintenance, began providing Lucia with detailed technical briefings about her aircraft's performance characteristics and potential modifications that could enhance its capabilities. Lieutenant Colonel Williams from the intelligence section started including her in optional briefings about regional threat assessments and enemy tactics that went far beyond the standard information provided to squadron pilots. Most importantly, these connections gave Lucia perspective on how Squadron 47 was perceived by the rest of the base. What she discovered was that the Desert Hawk's reputation for excellence was accompanied by equally strong opinions about their arrogance and insularity. Other units respected their combat effectiveness, but found their attitude toward non-squadron personnel condescending and unprofessional. This broader context helped Lucia understand that her treatment was part of a larger pattern of behavior, rather than a reflection of her own inadequacies. The turning point in Lucia's situation began with a seemingly routine training exercise in late October. Squadron 47 was scheduled to participate in a large-scale joint training operation called Desert Thunder, involving multiple fighter squadrons, ground support units, and simulated enemy forces. The exercise was designed to test inter-unit coordination and tactical adaptability under challenging conditions, with performance evaluations that would influence future training opportunities and resource allocation. Thomson approached the exercise with his characteristic confidence, developing a tactical plan that showcased the Desert Hawk's precision and aggressive approach. The plan called for coordinated strikes against multiple simulated targets, with each pilot assigned specific roles based on their perceived strengths and reliability. As expected, Lucia was assigned to a support position that kept her away from the primary action while providing her squadron mates with opportunities to demonstrate their superior skills and integration. What Thomson didn't anticipate was that Desert Thunder would attract attention from senior Air Force leadership looking for examples of exceptional performance to highlight in upcoming budget discussions and strategic planning sessions. Colonel Patricia Hayes, the base commander, had received advance notice that several generals would be observing the exercise and evaluating unit performance for potential recognition and additional resources. The pressure to perform at the highest levels suddenly transformed what had been planned as a routine training exercise into a high-stakes demonstration with career implications for everyone involved. Thomson found himself facing the uncomfortable reality that his squadron's performance would be evaluated by people who cared more about results than internal politics, and that his personal feelings toward certain pilots might need to be subordinated to objective assessments of capability and performance. 3 days before the exercise, Thomson called a squadron meeting to review tactical assignments and emphasize the importance of flawless execution. For the first time since Lucia's arrival, he acknowledged her presence in terms that suggested professional respect rather than grudging tolerance. "Rivera, your fuel management skills are going to be critical during the extended patrol phases," he said, making direct eye contact. "I need you prepared for potential modifications to flight plans based on developing tactical situations." The comment was brief and purely professional, but it represented a significant shift in Thomson's public treatment of Lucia. Several squadron members noticed the change, though none understood its implications or permanence. What they couldn't see was Thomson's internal calculation that his own career advancement might depend on the squadron's collective performance rather than on maintaining personal hierarchies and proving points about military culture. Lucia recognized the opportunity that Desert Thunder represented, but she also understood the risks involved. Exceptional performance could finally earn her the respect and opportunity she deserved, but any mistakes would be magnified and used to justify the doubts about her capabilities that had been circulating for months. The exercise would test not only her flying skills, but also her ability to function effectively within a unit that had spent 8 months undermining her confidence and limiting her opportunities to prove herself. Her preparation for Desert Thunder was characteristically thorough and methodical. She spent hours reviewing intelligence reports about the simulated enemy tactics, studying topographical maps of the exercise area, and analyzing weather patterns that could affect aircraft performance and tactical options. She also reached out to pilots from other squadrons who had participated in similar exercises, gathering insights about challenges and opportunities that might not be apparent from official briefing materials. Most importantly, Lucia used the 3 days before the exercise to quietly demonstrate the depth of her tactical knowledge and strategic thinking. During planning sessions, she offered suggestions that revealed her understanding of complex operational considerations while remaining respectful of the command hierarchy. Her ideas were practical and well-reasoned, based on extensive combat experience that most of her squadron mates lacked, despite their technical proficiency and unit cohesion. For the first time since her arrival at Whitmore, Lucia began to sense a subtle shift in how some of her fellow pilots perceived her. The approaching exercise had focused everyone's attention on performance rather than politics, creating space for professional recognition that had been absent during routine training operations. Not everyone was ready to abandon their preconceptions, but the possibility of change had entered the squadron's collective consciousness. As Desert Thunder approached, Lucia felt a familiar combination of anticipation and calm that had sustained her through numerous challenging situations throughout her military career. She had faced hostile fire over Afghanistan, navigated complex political situations and international joint operations, and overcome institutional resistance in previous assignments. Squadron 47 represented another challenge to be met with the same combination of preparation, professionalism, and quiet determination that had served her well in more dangerous circumstances. The evening before the exercise, Lucia sat in her temporary quarters reviewing her flight checklist one final time. Outside her window, she could see aircraft maintenance crews working under floodlights to ensure every fighter would be ready for the early morning launch. The base hummed with the controlled energy that preceded major operations, a sound that always reminded her why she had chosen military aviation as her career path. Tomorrow would bring the opportunity she had been waiting for since her arrival at Whitmore. Not the chance to prove her critics wrong, but the chance to demonstrate the capabilities that had earned her place among the Air Force's finest pilots. Whether Squadron 47 was ready to recognize those capabilities remained to be seen, but Lucia was prepared to show them exactly what a paper tiger could accomplish when the mission demanded excellence over politics. The systematic campaign against Lucia intensified as Desert Thunder drew closer. What had begun as professional skepticism evolved into something more deliberate and coordinated. Thomson's inner circle, led by Sergeant Kyle Henderson, implemented a strategy designed to undermine her confidence and operational readiness through a series of calculated disruptions and psychological pressure tactics. Henderson had perfected the art of plausible deniability. During pre-flight briefings, he would distribute updated tactical information to every pilot except Lucia, claiming her copy had been misplaced or that he thought someone else had already provided it. When she inquired about the missing materials, he would apologize profusely while ensuring that several squadron mates witnessed her apparent lack of preparation. The pattern repeated itself across multiple scenarios: equipment checks that somehow missed her aircraft, fuel calculations that contained subtle errors affecting her flight plans, and communication frequencies that were changed without notification. The psychological warfare extended beyond administrative harassment. Captain Ryan Foster, Thomson's most trusted pilot and heir apparent to squadron leadership, began a campaign of professional intimidation disguised as helpful mentorship. He would approach Lucia after difficult training flights with observations about her performance that were technically accurate but delivered in ways that emphasized her outsider status within the unit. Interesting approach to that intercept pattern, Foster would say in the hangar, his voice loud enough to carry to nearby maintenance crews and other pilots. Most of us learned that maneuver during basic training, but I guess different schools have different standards. His comments were never directly insulting, but they consistently positioned Lucia as someone operating with inferior knowledge or outdated techniques compared to the squadron's established methods. The social isolation became more sophisticated as well. The Friday evening gatherings at the Falcon's Nest evolved into planning sessions for weekend activities that reinforced squadron bonds while excluding Lucia from informal networks where crucial information was often shared. Hunting trips, golf tournaments, and family barbecues became venues for discussing tactical innovations, sharing insights about commanding officers' preferences, and building the personal relationships that translated into professional opportunities. When Lucia attempted to organize her own social events, inviting squadron mates to coffee or informal dinners, she was met with polite declining responses citing prior commitments or family obligations. Yet these same pilots seemed readily available when Foster or Henderson extended similar invitations. The message was clear. Squadron 47 operated as an exclusive club, and membership required approval from existing members who had no intention of expanding their circle. The technical sabotage escalated during the final weeks before Desert Thunder. Lucia's aircraft began experiencing an unusual pattern of minor, mechanical issues that delayed her training flights and limited her opportunities to practice complex maneuvers with the rest of the squadron. Radio equipment would malfunction during critical communication exercises. Navigation systems would display intermittent errors that forced her to rely on backup instruments. Weapon systems required repeated calibration procedures that consumed valuable training time. Master Sergeant Rodriguez, the maintenance chief, privately expressed concerns about the pattern of problems affecting Lucia's aircraft. "Ma'am, I've been working on these birds for 18 years, he confided during a late evening maintenance check. "I've never seen this combination of unrelated issues appearing in such a short time frame on a single aircraft. The equipment logs show all systems were functioning normally before being assigned to you, and they're working fine when we test them in isolation." Rodriguez's observations confirmed what Lucia had suspected but couldn't prove. Someone with access to her aircraft was introducing subtle modifications that wouldn't appear dangerous during standard safety inspections, but would create performance problems during actual flight operations. The sabotage was sophisticated enough to avoid detection by routine maintenance procedures while effectively limiting her ability to demonstrate her capabilities during training exercises. The administrative harassment reached new levels of creativity and maliciousness. Lucia's flight schedules were modified without notice, forcing her to miss planned training sessions or arrive unprepared for exercises that had been changed at the last minute. Her requests for specialized equipment or additional flight time were buried in paperwork delays, while similar requests from other pilots received immediate approval. Training manuals disappeared from her assigned study carrel in the squadron library, only to reappear in locations where their absence would be noticed and attributed to her carelessness. Thomson's performance evaluations became exercises in bureaucratic character assassination. He would document minor technical infractions while ignoring identical behavior from other pilots. Radio protocol deviations that earned gentle corrections for squadron favorites became formal counseling sessions when attributed to Lucia. Her flight reports were subjected to microscopic scrutiny that identified inconsistencies in formatting, errors overlooked in submissions from more favored subordinates. The evaluation process was particularly insidious because Thomson maintained the appearance of objective, professional assessment while applying completely different standards to different pilots. His written comments praised other squadron members for taking initiative and demonstrating leadership potential when they deviated from standard procedures, while criticizing Lucia for failing to follow established protocols when she made similar decisions. The double standard was obvious to anyone comparing the evaluations side by side, but the individual documents appeared reasonable and professional when viewed in isolation. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, one of the squadron's newer pilots, began to notice the disparate treatment during joint training exercises. Webb had arrived at Whitmore 6 weeks after Lucia and had initially accepted the prevailing attitude toward her as an accurate assessment of her capabilities. However, his own flight experience began to contradict the reputation that preceded her. During a complex air-to-ground exercise, Webb found himself paired with Lucia for a simulated close air support mission. His expectations, shaped by months of subtle disparagement from squadron mates, led him to anticipate working with someone whose skills were marginal and whose tactical understanding was limited. Instead, he discovered a pilot whose precision and tactical awareness exceeded that of several squadron veterans. Rivera's target identification was flawless, Webb mentioned during the post-exercise debrief. Her coordination with ground controllers was textbook perfect, and her weapon delivery accuracy was the highest in the flight. His comments were met with uncomfortable silence from Thomson and dismissive explanations from Foster about the difference between training exercises and real combat pressure. Webb's growing skepticism about the squadron's assessment of Lucia was reinforced during subsequent exercises where her performance consistently exceeded expectations while receiving minimal recognition from squadron leadership. He began to understand that he was witnessing something beyond professional evaluation. This was personal animosity disguised as military standards, implemented through a systematic campaign designed to drive Lucia away from the squadron or damage her career prospects. The revelation troubled Webb for several reasons. As a young officer early in his career, he depended on senior leadership for guidance about military culture and professional development. The discovery that respected commanders were capable of such deliberate unfairness challenged his assumptions about military justice and meritocracy. More practically, he realized that his own future could be jeopardized if he fell out of favor with Thomson or failed to demonstrate sufficient loyalty to squadron priorities. Staff Sergeant Diana Chun faced a similar moral dilemma from a different perspective. As one of only 3 women assigned to Whitmore Air Force Base in any capacity, Chun understood the additional scrutiny and challenges that accompanied military service for female personnel. She had watched Lucia's treatment with growing concern while remaining publicly silent due to her own precarious position within the base hierarchy. Chun worked in the intelligence section, providing threat assessments and tactical briefings to various squadron units. Her position gave her access to performance data and operational reports that revealed the gap between Lucia's actual capabilities and her reputation. Within Squadron 47, the intelligence evaluations consistently rated Lucia's mission planning and threat analysis among the best submitted by any pilot on the base, while her tactical recommendations demonstrated sophisticated understanding of complex operational environments. The disconnect between objective performance measures and subjective evaluations from squadron leadership was stark enough to attract attention from intelligence analysts who worked with multiple units. Chun found herself fielding questions about why one of the base's most capable pilots was consistently assigned to low-priority missions and excluded from advanced training opportunities. "Something doesn't add up with the Desert Hawk's personnel assignments," commented Major Stevens, Chun's commanding officer, during a routine briefing preparation session. "Rivera's tactical analysis is consistently superior to most pilot submissions, but she's never included in the complex scenarios where those skills would be most valuable. Thomson's reports suggest performance issues, but I'm not seeing evidence of those problems in the mission planning documents." Chun's response required careful navigation between professional honesty and unit loyalty. She couldn't directly criticize another squadron's leadership without risking her own career, but she also couldn't ignore obvious evidence of unfair treatment. Her solution was to focus on objective data while avoiding speculation about motivations or command decisions. "Captain Rivera's intelligence utilization scores are consistently high," Chun replied. Her threat assessments demonstrate advanced tactical thinking and comprehensive understanding of operational complexities. Her mission success predictions have been accurate in 93% of scenarios, which places her in the top 5% of all pilots we've evaluated across multiple squadrons. Stevens absorbed this information with the analytical mindset that had made him an effective intelligence officer. The numbers told a story that contradicted the personnel reports he'd been receiving from Squadron 47. Either Lucia was capable of exceptional performance in low-pressure evaluation environments while failing under operational stress, or there were other factors influencing her treatment within the squadron. The intelligence section's growing interest in the discrepancy created additional pressure for Thomson to justify his assessment of Lucia's capabilities. Stevens began requesting detailed explanations for training assignments and performance evaluations that seemed inconsistent with objective measurement data. These inquiries forced Thomson to defend his decisions with specific examples and documented evidence, rather than relying on general assertions about squadron needs and pilot readiness. Thomson's response was to intensify the documentation of minor infractions and technical violations while limiting Lucia's opportunities to demonstrate superior performance in areas where her capabilities were most evident. If intelligence analysts wanted specific examples of performance problems, he would provide them through increasingly selective evaluation criteria and microscopic scrutiny of routine operations. The strategy backfired when Stevens realized that Thomson's documentation focused exclusively on minor, procedural issues while ignoring the fundamental measures of pilot effectiveness used by intelligence assessments. The pattern suggested either incompetent evaluation methods or deliberate misrepresentation of subordinate capabilities. Stevens began conducting his own informal evaluation of Lucia's performance by requesting detailed debriefs after training exercises and comparing her tactical insights with those provided by other squadron pilots. Colonel Patricia Hayes, the base commander, remained largely unaware of the developing situation within Squadron 47 due to the competing demands of managing a complex military installation with multiple operational priorities. Her interactions with squadron leadership occurred primarily through formal briefings and official reports that painted a picture of normal unit operations with routine personnel adjustments and training progressions. However, Hayes possessed the institutional experience to recognize subtle indicators of organizational dysfunction when they appeared in her peripheral vision. The unusual number of administrative requests related to Squadron 47 personnel assignments began to attract her attention during routine paperwork reviews. Transfer requests, training modifications, and equipment reassignments typically followed predictable patterns based on operational needs and career development requirements. The recent pattern of requests involving Lucia's status within the squadron departed from these norms in ways that suggested underlying issues requiring command attention. Hayes's approach to potential personnel problems was methodical and discreet. Rather than launching formal investigations that could damage careers and unit cohesion, she preferred to gather information through informal conversations and careful observation of unit dynamics during routine operations. Her first step was to review performance data from multiple sources to determine whether Squadron 47's assessment of Lucia's capabilities was consistent with evaluations from other parts of the base. The review revealed the same discrepancies that had troubled Stevens and Chun. Lucia's performance on objective measures, CONSISTENTL, exceeded squadron averages and compared favorably with the base's most experienced pilots. Her tactical knowledge and mission planning skills ranked among the highest evaluated by intelligence analysts. Her aircraft maintenance requirements were below average, suggesting careful handling and professional competence. Yet her opportunities within Squadron 47 remained limited, and her squadron evaluations reflected concerns about readiness and integration that weren't supported by external assessments. Hayes scheduled individual meetings with key personnel to discuss squadron operations and training effectiveness without specifically mentioning Lucia or indicating any particular concerns. These conversations provided additional insight into the command climate within Squadron 47 and the attitudes toward personnel management that shaped daily operations. Thomson's responses during these meetings revealed his perception of leadership challenges and unit cohesion priorities. He emphasized the importance of maintaining squadron traditions and ensuring that new personnel understood established procedures before being given expanded responsibilities. His comments about the challenges of integrating diverse backgrounds and experience levels carried subtle implications about gender and military culture that Hayes recognized as potential warning signs. Foster's perspective during a similar conversation reinforced Hayes's growing concerns about Squadron 47's approach to personnel development. His emphasis on loyalty and team chemistry as prerequisites for advanced training opportunities suggested that subjective factors were being given greater weight than objective performance measures in making assignment decisions. Webb's input provided a different perspective that contradicted some of the squadron leadership's assertions about unit cohesion and training effectiveness. His observations about inconsistent evaluation standards and the disconnect between pilot capabilities and assignment decisions gave Hayes specific examples of the problems she had been sensing through administrative indicators. The cumulative evidence from these conversations convinced Hayes that Squadron 47 was experiencing significant leadership and personnel management problems that could affect operational readiness and unit effectiveness. The upcoming Desert Thunder exercise would provide an opportunity to observe the squadron's dynamics under operational pressure while evaluating individual and collective performance against objective standards. Hayes decided to take a more active role in monitoring Desert Thunder preparation and execution. Her presence during planning sessions and training exercises would send a clear message about command attention while providing opportunities to assess squadron leadership and individual pilot capabilities firsthand. The exercise would become an unofficial evaluation of Thomson's command, effectiveness, and the squadron's readiness for the complex challenges they would face during future deployments. The pressure created by increased command attention began to affect squadron dynamics in subtle but significant ways. Thomson recognized that his handling of personnel issues was under scrutiny and that his future career prospects could depend on demonstrating effective leadership during Desert Thunder. The realization forced him to reconsider some of his assumptions about squadron management and personnel development while maintaining his authority and the respect of his subordinates. Henderson and Foster sensed the shift in command climate and began moderating their treatment of Lucia while maintaining their loyalty to Thomson and their positions within the squadron hierarchy. The reduction in overt harassment created space for Lucia to focus on exercise preparation while demonstrating her capabilities in less hostile environments. For Lucia, the changing dynamics represented both opportunity and risk. The increased visibility could provide the platform she needed to demonstrate her true capabilities, but it also meant that any mistakes or shortcomings would be magnified and scrutinized by multiple levels of command. The Desert Thunder exercise was evolving from a routine training operation into a career-defining moment that would determine her future within Squadron 47 and potentially within the Air Force. Final week before Desert Thunder brought intensive preparation sessions that tested both individual skills and unit coordination. For the first time since her arrival at Whitmore, Lucia found herself included in advanced tactical planning discussions where her insights were acknowledged and incorporated into mission strategies. The change was subtle but significant, representing a crack in the wall of exclusion that had defined her squadron experience. Thomson's behavior during these planning sessions reflected his internal struggle between personal animosity and professional necessity. He needed Lucia to perform effectively during Desert Thunder to ensure squadron success, but he remained reluctant to acknowledge her capabilities or provide the recognition that her performance warranted. His solution was to assign her critical responsibilities while minimizing public acknowledgement of her contributions to mission planning and tactical development. The compromise satisfied immediate operational needs while preserving the command, hierarchy, and personal relationships that Thomson valued. However, it also created conditions where Lucia's performance during Desert Thunder would be impossible to ignore or minimize. If she succeeded in the roles she'd been assigned, her capabilities would be demonstrated to command authorities who valued results over politics. If she failed, Thomson would have the justification he needed to exclude her from future operations and potentially pursue her transfer to another unit. As Desert Thunder approached, every member of Squadron 47 understood that their individual and collective futures hung in the balance. The exercise would test their technical skills, tactical knowledge, and ability to function effectively under pressure. For Lucia, it represented the culmination of 8 months of systematic opposition and the Opportunity to prove that a paper tiger could demonstrate the heart of a true warrior when the mission demanded excellence over prejudice. Desert Thunder commenced at 0530 hours on a crisp November morning with conditions that military planners described as challenging but manageable. Low-hanging clouds at 8,000 feet would force pilots to operate at reduced altitudes, while intermittent wind shear in the mountain valleys promised to test aircraft handling skills and tactical adaptability. For Squadron 47, the exercise represented their most significant evaluation opportunity in over 2 years, with performance metrics that would influence training budgets, equipment allocations, and advancement opportunities for every participating pilot. The initial phase involved coordinated strikes against simulated enemy positions, distributed across a training range that stretched for over 200 square miles through Nevada's high desert terrain. Each squadron was assigned specific targets with varying levels of difficulty and strategic importance. Success would be measured not only by individual accuracy and timing, but by the unit's ability to coordinate complex operations while adapting to changing tactical situations and unexpected complications. Thomson's mission planning emphasized the aggressive tactics and precise coordination that had made Squadron 47 famous throughout the Air Force. His strategy called for rapid sequential strikes designed to overwhelm enemy defenses before they could adapt to the attacking force's approach patterns. The plan showcased the squadron's technical excellence while minimizing the variables that could lead to individual failures or equipment problems that might compromise overall unit performance. Lucia found herself assigned to a supporting role that would keep her away from the primary strike operations, while providing essential services that could influence the entire mission's success. Thomson designated her as the mission's fuel and logistics coordinator, responsible for monitoring aircraft consumption rates, identifying refueling opportunities, and managing the complex scheduling required to keep 12 fighters operational throughout the extended exercise period. The assignment was technically critical, but offered limited opportunities for the kind of dramatic individual performance that would attract attention from observing commanders. Thomson's calculation was that Lucia could contribute to mission success without receiving recognition that might challenge existing squadron hierarchies or validate her claims to equal treatment and advancement opportunities. What Thomson hadn't anticipated was that fuel and logistics coordination during Desert Thunder would require exactly the kind of tactical thinking and operational awareness that Lucia had developed through years of combat experience in challenging environments. The exercise scenarios included simulated fuel shortages, emergency landing requirements, and dynamic target changes that would test her ability to make split-second decisions affecting multiple aircraft and crews. Colonel Hayes positioned herself in the primary observation post overlooking the exercise area, accompanied by a team of senior officers whose evaluation would determine Squadron 47's future resources and reputation. Her presence added pressure to an already high-stakes operation while ensuring that every aspect of the squadron's performance would be scrutinized by experienced commanders familiar with elite unit operations. The first indication that Desert Thunder would test Squadron 47 beyond their expectations came 30 minutes into the initial strike phase. Captain Foster, leading the primary attack formation, reported unexpected enemy air activity that wasn't part of the original exercise scenario. The simulated opposition force had introduced additional aircraft and surface-to-air missile sites that required immediate tactical adjustments to avoid mission failure or simulated aircraft losses. Thomson's response revealed both his strengths and limitations as a combat leader. He quickly recognized the changed tactical situation and began issuing modified orders to his pilots, demonstrating the quick thinking and decisive leadership that had earned him command of an elite squadron. However, his focus on maintaining the aggressive approach outlined in his original plan prevented him from considering alternative strategies that might better address the new challenges. Foster's formation found itself facing a more complex, defensive environment than anticipated, with simulated enemy fighters positioned to intercept their approach, while ground-based missiles created overlapping threat zones that eliminated several planned strike routes. The original timeline for target engagement became impossible to maintain without accepting unacceptable risk levels or compromising mission objectives. Lucia monitored the developing situation from her coordination position, tracking fuel consumption, rates that were increasing faster than planned due to the evasive maneuvers required to avoid simulated enemy threats. Her calculations indicated that several aircraft would reach minimum fuel levels before completing their assigned missions unless alternative approaches were implemented immediately. The tactical problem required someone to balance competing priorities while developing solutions that addressed both the immediate threat environment and the resource constraints affecting the entire squadron. Thomson was focused on directing the primary strike operations, while his subordinate commanders were managing their individual formations through increasingly complex tactical situations. "Control, this is Rivera," Lucia's voice cut through the radio chatter with calm precision. "I'm showing fuel consumption rates 30% above projected levels across all formations. Current trajectory puts 4 aircraft below mission minimums within 15 minutes unless we modify approach patterns or implement immediate refueling procedures." Thomson's initial reaction was irritation at what he perceived as unnecessary caution that could undermine his aggressive tactical approach. "Rivera, maintain current monitoring procedures and report significant changes only," he responded curtly, his attention focused on the unfolding air combat scenarios rather than the logistics implications of extended operations. However, Foster's situation continued to deteriorate as the simulated enemy forces proved more capable and better coordinated than the exercise planners had indicated. His formation was burning fuel at unsustainable rates while making minimal progress toward their assigned targets. The original 15-minute strike window was extending toward 30 minutes, with no guarantee that the targets could be successfully engaged even with the additional time. Lieutenant Webb, flying in Foster's formation, was the first to recognize that fuel considerations were becoming more critical than tactical positioning. His aircraft's consumption indicators showed levels that would require immediate departure from the exercise area within 10 minutes to maintain safety margins for 4. Return to base. The choice was between abandoning the mission or accepting risks that violated standard operating procedures. "Lead, this is Webb. I'm showing bingo fuel in 8 minutes unless we modify our current profile," he reported, using the military term for minimum fuel levels required for safe return to base. His transmission prompted similar reports from other pilots who had been monitoring their own consumption rates, while focusing on the tactical challenges presented by enemy opposition. Foster faced the commander's dilemma that defined military leadership under pressure. His mission orders emphasized target destruction and tactical success, but his responsibility for pilot safety required conservative fuel management and risk assessment. The conflicting priorities demanded a solution that balanced operational objectives with crew survival, complicated by time pressure and the presence of senior observers evaluating his decision-making capabilities. Thomson found himself managing a crisis that threatened to compromise the entire exercise while being observed by commanders whose opinions would influence his career prospects for years to come. The tactical situation had evolved beyond his original planning assumptions, requiring adaptive leadership and innovative solutions that would demonstrate his unit's capabilities under adverse conditions. "All formations, this is Control." Thomson's voice carried the controlled tension of a commander adapting to unexpected circumstances. "Implement fuel conservation profile and report current consumption status immediately. We're adjusting tactical approach to address developing situation." The order represented Thomson's recognition that logistics Considerations were becoming more important than aggressive tactics, but it also highlighted his dependence on Lucia's monitoring and analysis capabilities. Her warnings about fuel consumption had been accurate, and her early identification of the developing problem had provided the time margin necessary to implement corrective measures before the situation became critical. Lucia's response demonstrated the depth of her tactical knowledge and her ability to develop innovative solutions under pressure. Rather than simply reporting problems, she began proposing specific modifications to flight patterns and engagement. Sequences that would reduce fuel consumption while maintaining mission effectiveness. Her suggestions revealed an understanding of both technical aircraft capabilities and tactical requirements that impressed even skeptical squadron members. Control, Rivera. Recommend formation Alpha, adjust to bearing 270 and reduce altitude to 6,000 feet. Wind patterns at that level will provide 12% improvement in fuel efficiency while maintaining tactical positioning for target engagement. Formation Bravo can implement similar profile at bearing 315 for optimal fuel conservation. Her recommendations were based on real-time weather analysis, aircraft performance calculations, and tactical assessment that synthesized multiple complex variables into actionable guidance. The precision and relevance of her suggestions exceeded what most pilots could have developed under similar pressure, revealing capabilities that had been hidden by months of limited assignments and restricted opportunities. Thomson faced a moment of decision that would define both the exercise outcome and his squadron's future dynamics. He could accept Lucia's recommendations and potentially achieve mission success through her tactical insights, or he could maintain his original approach and risk mission failure while preserving existing command relationships and squadron hierarchies. The presence of Colonel Hayes and other senior observers eliminated any possibility of disguising mission results or minimizing individual contributions to unit success. Every decision and its consequences would be documented and evaluated by commanders whose primary concern was operational effectiveness rather than internal squadron politics. All formations implement Rivera's recommended adjustments immediately, Thomson ordered, his voice reflecting the pragmatic decision-making that had made him an effective combat leader despite his personal biases. Formation leaders confirm when new profiles are established and report fuel status at 2-minute intervals. The tactical adjustments proved immediately effective as aircraft consumption rates decreased toward sustainable levels while maintaining positioning for successful target engagement. Foster's formation was able to complete their primary mission objectives within acceptable time parameters, while the supporting formations maintained the fuel reserves necessary for safe recovery operations. Webb's experience during the modified approach provided him with direct evidence of Lucia's tactical capabilities that contradicted everything he had been told about her readiness and competence. Her weather analysis had been perfect, her fuel calculations had been accurate to within 2%, and her understanding of optimal flight profiles had demonstrated knowledge that exceeded that of several squadron veterans. Rivera's recommendations just saved our mission, Webb transmitted on a discrete frequency to another pilot in his formation. Her tactical analysis was absolutely spot on. I don't understand why she's been kept in support roles when she obviously has the knowledge to be leading formations. The comment was overheard by several other pilots who were beginning to recognize the disconnect between Lucia's demonstrated capabilities and her reputation within the squadron. The evidence was becoming too overwhelming to ignore or explain away through assumptions about gender limitations or combat inexperience. Foster found himself in the uncomfortable position of owing mission success to someone he had spent months disparaging and excluding from squadron operations. His formation's achievements during Desert Thunder would enhance his own reputation and advancement prospects, but those achievements had been made possible by tactical insights from a pilot he had consistently dismissed as inadequately prepared for elite squadron operations. The second phase of Desert Thunder introduced ground support scenarios that required close coordination between air and ground forces while maintaining awareness of evolving threat environments. Squadron 47 was assigned to provide close air support for simulated special operations teams conducting reconnaissance missions in mountainous terrain that limited communication effectiveness and complicated tactical coordination. The mission parameters demanded precisely the kind of tactical flexibility and situational awareness that had characterized Lucia's military career, particularly her experience supporting ground forces in Afghanistan's challenging operational environment. However, her assignment to logistics coordination meant that she would be observing and supporting the mission rather than participating directly in the combat operations. Thomson's approach to the ground support phase emphasized the same aggressive tactics that had defined his squadron's reputation, but the operational environment demanded more nuanced responses that balanced air superiority with ground force protection and mission flexibility. The special operations teams required air support that could adapt to rapidly changing situations, while minimizing risk to friendly forces operating in close proximity to enemy positions. Captain Ryan Foster led the ground support formation with confidence based on his technical flying skills and familiarity with standard close air support procedures. However, his experience was primarily limited to training exercises conducted in controlled environments with predictable parameters and clear communication protocols. The Desert Thunder scenario included communication difficulties, changing weather conditions, and simulated enemy forces that operated with greater sophistication than typical training opposition. 15 minutes into the ground support phase, Foster's formation encountered communication problems that prevented them from receiving updated target information from the ground forces they were supporting. The special operations teams had identified high-value targets that required immediate airstrikes, but interference from mountainous terrain and simulated enemy jamming made direct coordination impossible. Foster faced a tactical dilemma that required balancing mission objectives with safety considerations, while operating with incomplete information about friendly force positions and enemy capabilities. Standard procedures called for aborting airstrikes when communication with ground forces couldn't be established, but the exercise scenario suggested that mission success depended on providing effective support despite communication challenges. Lucia monitored the developing situation from her coordination position, tracking both the air formations and the ground forces through multiple communication channels and technical systems that provided broader situational awareness than any individual pilot could maintain while flying complex missions. Her position allowed her to see tactical opportunities and potential problems that weren't apparent to commanders focused on immediate operational challenges. The solution required someone with experience coordinating air and ground operations in challenging environments, combined with technical knowledge of communication systems and tactical procedures that could overcome the simulated problems affecting normal coordination methods. Lucia's background included exactly this type of complex operational experience, gained during multiple combat deployments where communication failures and equipment problems were routine challenges rather than exceptional circumstances. Control. Rivera, I'm tracking ground force positions through alternate communication channels. Special ops teams have identified 3 high-value targets requiring immediate air support. I can provide target coordinates and friendly force locations to enable successful engagement despite primary communication difficulties. Her transmission cut through the confusion that had been paralyzing the air support mission, while offering a solution that would allow Squadron 47 to achieve their objectives, despite equipment limitations and environmental challenges. The offer represented capabilities that none of the flying pilots possessed, while demonstrating tactical knowledge that exceeded standard training parameters. Thomson realized that accepting Lucia's assistance would acknowledge her superior capabilities in a critical mission area while potentially compromising his authority and the squadron's traditional approach to command. Relationships, however. Rejecting her offer would likely result in mission failure and negative evaluations from the senior commanders observing the exercise. The weight of observation from Colonel Hayes and her evaluation team eliminated any possibility of prioritizing personal considerations over mission success. Thomson's response would be documented and analyzed by commanders, whose primary concern was operational effectiveness and unit readiness for real-world deployments where politics and personal relationships were irrelevant. Rivera, provide target coordinates and friendly positions immediately. All formations stand by for updated mission parameters, Thomson ordered, his decision reflecting the pragmatic leadership that had earned him squadron command, despite his personal limitations. Prejudices. Lucia's coordination of the complex air support mission demonstrated tactical capabilities that exceeded those of most squadron members while revealing knowledge gained through combat experience that couldn't be replicated in training environments. Her ability to track multiple elements simultaneously while developing innovative solutions to communication problems showcased exactly the kind of operational expertise that elite squadrons required for challenging deployments. The successful completion of the ground support mission created additional evidence that Lucia's capabilities had been systematically underutilized and misrepresented. Within Squadron 47, her contributions to mission success were becoming impossible to ignore or minimize, particularly given the presence of senior observers who evaluated performance based on results, rather than internal squadron politics and personal relationships. As Desert Thunder entered its final phase, every member of Squadron 47 understood that their individual and collective futures were being determined by their performance, under the scrutiny of commanders who would influence their careers for years to come. For Lucia, the exercise had become an opportunity to demonstrate capabilities that had been suppressed by months of systematic exclusion and professional harassment. The foundation was being laid for a confrontation that would force Squadron 47 to acknowledge realities that had been ignored for nearly a year, while potentially transforming the unit's culture and operational approach. The paper tiger was preparing to reveal the heart of a warrior that had never been broken, despite sustained efforts to drive her away from the squadron and the military career that had defined her adult life. The final phase of Desert Thunder introduced complications that no amount of planning could have anticipated. At 13:47 hours, simulated enemy forces launched what exercise controllers described as a coordinated counterattack designed to test participating units under maximum stress conditions. The scenario escalated beyond routine training parameters when actual weather conditions deteriorated rapidly, creating genuine safety concerns that transformed the exercise from simulation into real operational challenges. Thunderstorms moving through the mountain valleys generated severe turbulence and reduced visibility that pushed aircraft performance to operational limits. What had begun as manageable training conditions evolved into flight environments that demanded the highest levels of pilot skill and aircraft handling capability. The combination of simulated combat pressure and actual weather hazards created exactly the kind of complex operational situation that separated exceptional pilots from merely competent ones. Squadron 47 found themselves dispersed across the training area when the weather deteriorated, with individual aircraft facing different levels of risk, depending on their positions relative to the storm systems. Foster's formation was caught in a narrow valley where wind shear and downdrafts created flight conditions that required immediate tactical adjustments to maintain aircraft control and crew safety. Webb's aircraft experienced the first serious emergency when severe turbulence caused multiple system malfunctions that compromised his navigation equipment and primary flight instruments. Flying in rapidly deteriorating visibility with unreliable instruments, He faced the kind of life-threatening situation that transformed training exercises into genuine survival scenarios. "Mayday, mayday, this is Webb. I've lost primary navigation and flight instruments due to turbulence damage. I'm flying on backup systems with minimal visibility and need immediate assistance for safe recovery." His transmission carried the controlled urgency of a pilot managing a genuine emergency while maintaining the professional composure required for effective communication. Thomson's response revealed the limitations of his leadership style when faced with genuine crisis situations that demanded rapid decision-making based on incomplete information and competing priorities. His training had prepared him for tactical combat scenarios and routine operational challenges, but the combination of actual weather emergencies and simulated combat pressure created decision-making environments that exceeded his experience base. "Webb, maintain current heading and altitude while we coordinate recovery assistance," Thomson replied, his voice reflecting uncertainty about appropriate procedures for managing genuine emergencies during training exercises. The situation required someone capable of integrating weather analysis, aircraft performance calculations, and tactical considerations, while coordinating multiple resources under time pressure. Lucia monitored Webb's emergency from her coordination position while simultaneously tracking the locations and fuel status of all Squadron aircraft scattered across an increasingly dangerous operational environment. Her tactical display showed aircraft positions relative to storm systems, available emergency landing sites, and fuel reserves that were being consumed faster than planned due to the additional power requirements for flying in severe weather conditions. The complexity of managing multiple aircraft in deteriorating conditions while maintaining exercise objectives required exactly the kind of multidimensional tactical thinking that had characterized Lucia's most challenging combat deployments. Her experience coordinating air operations in Afghanistan's mountainous terrain during adverse weather conditions provided the background knowledge necessary to develop solutions that balanced safety requirements with mission objectives. "Control, Rivera. I'm tracking Webb's position relative to emergency landing sites and weather patterns. Recommend immediate vector to bearing 185 for 10 miles to clear the storm system, then direct approach to auxiliary field Charlie 7. Current weather at that location shows acceptable conditions for emergency landing procedures." Her recommendation demonstrated real-time integration of weather data, aircraft performance parameters, and geographic information that exceeded the analytical capabilities available to Thomson or any other individual pilot managing the developing crisis. The precision and relevance of her guidance revealed tactical knowledge that had been developed through years of operational experience, rather than classroom training. Thomson faced another decision point that would define both the immediate emergency response and the squadron's long-term dynamics. Accepting Lucia's tactical guidance might save Webb's life while acknowledging her superior capabilities in crisis management. Rejecting her recommendations could result in tragedy while maintaining existing command hierarchies that had become increasingly difficult to justify. Colonel Hayes observed the developing emergency from her command position with the analytical detachment of a senior officer evaluating unit performance under genuine pressure. The situation provided exactly the kind of real-world test that revealed individual and collective capabilities better than any planned exercise scenario. Her assessment would focus on decision-making quality, resource utilization, and leadership effectiveness during actual crisis management rather than simulated tactical operations. "Webb, implement Rivera's recommended vector immediately," Thomson ordered, his decision reflecting the pragmatic leadership that prioritized pilot safety over personal considerations. Rivera, continue monitoring his progress and provide updated guidance as conditions change. Lucia's coordination of Webb's emergency recovery demonstrated capabilities that exceeded those of typical squadron operations officers while revealing knowledge gained through combat experience that couldn't be replicated in training environments. Her ability to integrate multiple information sources while developing time-sensitive solutions showcased exactly the kind of operational expertise that elite squadrons required for challenging deployments. Webb's successful navigation to the auxiliary airfield provided dramatic evidence of Lucia's tactical capabilities while highlighting the gap between her demonstrated performance and her treatment within. Squadron 47. His aircraft touched down safely despite challenging conditions, avoided potential catastrophe through guidance that had been provided by someone whose abilities had been systematically questioned and minimized. Control Webb, safe on deck at Charlie 7 thanks to Rivera's navigation assistance. Her weather analysis and routing recommendations were absolutely perfect. I wouldn't have found this field without her guidance, and I definitely wouldn't have avoided the worst turbulence areas. Webb's transmission was heard by every member of Squadron 47, as well as the senior commanders observing the exercise. His public acknowledgement of Lucia's life-saving assistance created undeniable evidence of her tactical expertise while raising obvious questions about why such capabilities had been underutilized within the squadron's operational structure. However, Webb's emergency was only the beginning of a cascade of problems that would test Squadron 47's collective capabilities and reveal individual strengths that had been hidden by routine training operations. Foster's formation encountered their own crisis when simulated enemy surface-to-air missiles achieved what exercise controllers described as multiple successful engagements that eliminated 2 aircraft from the training scenario. The simulated loss of 2 squadron aircraft transformed the tactical situation from manageable challenge to potential disaster that threatened the entire mission's success. Foster found himself commanding a reduced formation while facing enemy opposition that had been designed to challenge full-strength units operating under optimal conditions. Control, this is Foster. I've lost 2 aircraft to SAM engagement and need immediate tactical adjustment to continue mission objectives. Current enemy disposition makes standard attack profiles impossible with reduced formation strength. Foster's request for tactical modification reflected his recognition that changing circumstances required adaptive leadership beyond the aggressive approaches that had characterized his previous experience. The situation demanded innovative solutions that balanced reduced capabilities with unchanged mission requirements while operating under genuine time pressure and performance evaluation. Thomson's response revealed his own limitations when faced with tactical problems that exceeded his planning assumptions and operational experience. His strength lay in executing predetermined strategies rather than developing innovative approaches to unexpected challenges. The situation required someone capable of rapid tactical analysis and creative problem-solving under pressure. Lucia's monitoring position provided her with comprehensive situational awareness that included enemy positions, friendly force capabilities, and environmental factors affecting tactical options. Her experience in similar situations during combat deployments gave her the background knowledge necessary to develop alternative approaches that could achieve mission objectives despite reduced resources and increased opposition. Control. Rivera. Recommend Foster's formation, implement modified attack profile using terrain masking and coordinated timing to overwhelm remaining enemy defensive positions. I can provide specific routing and timing parameters that will maximize surprise while minimizing exposure to remaining SAM sites. Her proposal represented sophisticated tactical thinking that integrated terrain analysis, enemy capability assessment, and formation coordination requirements into a comprehensive solution that addressed all aspects of the challenging tactical situation. The complexity and precision of her recommendations exceeded what most pilots could have developed under similar pressure and time constraints. Foster found himself in the position of needing assistance from someone he had spent months excluding. and disparaging within squadron social and professional circles. His formation success, and his own reputation, depended on tactical guidance from a pilot whose capabilities he had consistently questioned, while promoting the squadron's culture of exclusion and professional discrimination. The irony was not lost on other squadron members who recognized that Foster's potential success depended entirely on Lucia's tactical expertise and willingness to provide assistance despite the treatment she had received. Her professional response to the crisis demonstrated exactly the kind of character and competence that should have earned respect and recognition from the beginning of her assignment to Squadron 47. Rivera, provide detailed tactical parameters immediately, Foster requested, his transmission reflecting both urgent operational needs and implicit acknowledgement of Lucia's superior analytical capabilities. The situation had eliminated any possibility of maintaining pretense about relative skills and knowledge levels within the squadron. Lucia's tactical coordination of Foster's modified attack profile demonstrated mastery of complex operational planning that exceeded the capabilities of most squadron members while revealing experience gained through combat situations that couldn't be replicated in training exercises. Her ability to develop innovative solutions while coordinating multiple aircraft under pressure showcased exactly the kind of leadership potential that had been systematically suppressed. The successful execution of Foster's mission using Lucia's tactical planning created additional evidence that her capabilities had been dramatically underestimated and misrepresented within Squadron 47. Her contributions to mission success were becoming impossible to ignore or minimize, particularly given the presence of senior observers who evaluated performance based on results rather than internal squadron politics. As the weather emergency and tactical challenges continued to unfold, Colonel Hayes began to understand that she was witnessing something extraordinary. The pilot providing critical guidance and innovative solutions to multiple crisis situations was the same individual whose squadron evaluations had suggested limited capabilities and questionable readiness for advanced responsibilities. The disconnect between observed performance and documented assessments indicated either systematic evaluation failures or deliberate misrepresentation of subordinate capabilities. Hayes's experience with military leadership and personnel management provided her with the analytical framework necessary to recognize organizational dysfunction disguised as professional standards. Master Sergeant Henderson, observing the exercise from his position in squadron operations, found himself witnessing the collapse of assumptions that had guided his treatment of Lucia throughout her assignment to Whitmore Air Force Base. Her tactical expertise and crisis management capabilities exceeded those of pilots he had promoted and praised, while demonstrating exactly the kind of operational knowledge that elite squadrons required. The revelation forced Henderson to confront his own role in creating and maintaining squadron culture that had systematically excluded and undermined someone whose capabilities should have been recognized and utilized from the beginning of her assignment. His loyalty to Thomson and commitment to existing squadron hierarchies had contributed to organizational dysfunction that compromised operational effectiveness. Staff Sergeant Chun, monitoring the exercise from her intelligence position, recognized that she was documenting performance that contradicted months of personnel reports and evaluation summaries. Her professional obligation to provide accurate assessment data conflicted with squadron leadership's apparent commitment to maintaining narratives that minimized Lucia's contributions and capabilities. The developing situation created pressure for multiple squadron members to choose between loyalty to existing relationships and acknowledgement of obvious realities that could no longer be ignored or explained away. The paper tiger was revealing capabilities that transformed understanding of what had really been happening within Squadron 47's command structure and evaluation processes. Thomson found himself managing a crisis that threatened to expose systematic failures in his leadership and personnel management while being observed by senior commanders whose evaluations would influence his future career prospects. The situation demanded acknowledgement of realities that challenged fundamental assumptions about squadron culture and individual capabilities. The final phase of Desert Thunder was evolving into something far more significant than a routine training exercise. It was becoming a test of character and professional integrity that would determine not only individual futures, but the direction of Squadron 47's organizational culture and operational effectiveness. The truth about capabilities, leadership, and professional fairness was being revealed under circumstances that made denial or minimization impossible. As storm systems continued to affect the exercise area and tactical challenges mounted, every member of Squadron 47 began to understand that they were participating in events that would be remembered and discussed long after the formal exercise concluded. The paper tiger was demonstrating that genuine strength had never been about intimidation or exclusion, but about competence, character, and the willingness to serve others even when that service had not been recognized or appreciated. The transformation of Squadron 47 began immediately after Desert Thunder concluded with what Colonel Hayes described in her official report as exceptional performance under adverse conditions. The exercise had revealed capabilities and leadership potential that would reshape the unit's operational approach and personnel assignments for years to come. More importantly, it had exposed systematic failures in evaluation and utilization of human resources that demanded immediate corrective action. Thomson's first indication that fundamental changes were inevitable came during his private debrief with Colonel Hayes 3 days after the exercise concluded. Her office, normally a place where squadron commanders received routine administrative guidance and performance feedback, had become the setting for a career-defining conversation about leadership philosophy and personnel management practices. Major Thomson, I've reviewed the complete exercise documentation, including radio transcripts, tactical assessments, and observer reports from multiple senior officers, Hayes began, her tone carrying the controlled precision of a commander addressing serious organizational issues. The performance data reveals significant discrepancies between your unit's capabilities and the personnel evaluations that have been submitted over the past 8 months. Hayes placed a thick folder on her desk containing analysis that documented Lucia's contributions to mission success alongside Thomson's written assessments that had consistently questioned her readiness and competence. The contrast between observed performance and official evaluations was stark enough to suggest either systematic evaluation failures or deliberate misrepresentation of subordinate capabilities. Captain Rivera's tactical expertise in crisis management capabilities exceeded those demonstrated by several of your senior pilots. Hayes continued, her words carrying implications that extended far beyond routine performance discussions. Her guidance prevented at least one potential aircraft loss and enabled mission success in multiple complex scenarios. Yet her squadron evaluation suggests limited capabilities and questionable readiness for advanced responsibilities. Thomson recognized that he was facing the most serious challenge to his command authority and professional reputation. Since assuming leadership of Squadron 47, his response would determine not only his own future, but the degree to which his entire approach to personnel management and unit culture would be scrutinized and potentially restructured by higher command authority. Colonel, Captain Rivera's technical knowledge is certainly solid. Thomson replied carefully, attempting to acknowledge obvious realities while maintaining his previous assessments. However, squadron integration and team dynamics involve factors beyond individual technical competence. My evaluations have focused on overall readiness for the kind of unit cohesion required for deployment operations. Hayes absorbed Thomson's response with the analytical detachment of a senior officer who had observed similar attempts to justify questionable personnel decisions throughout her career. Her experience with military leadership and organizational dynamics provided her with the framework necessary to recognize rationalization disguised as professional judgment. Major, unit cohesion and team dynamics are indeed critical factors in squadron effectiveness, Hayes responded, her voice carrying subtle warning signals that indicated the conversation was moving toward formal evaluation territory. However, those factors must be evaluated based on actual performance and professional conduct rather than subjective assessments that may reflect personal biases or organizational prejudices. The statement represented Hayes's diplomatic but unmistakable indication that Thomson's personnel management practices had crossed from professional evaluation into territory that violated Air Force standards for equal opportunity and fair treatment. His response would determine whether the conversation remained a counseling session or evolved into formal investigation of discriminatory practices. Thomson understood that his next words would define his military future and potentially affect the careers of every member of Squadron 47. The evidence of Lucia's capabilities had become impossible to dispute, and his treatment of her could no longer be justified through appeals to unit culture or traditional squadron practices. Colonel, I recognize that my assessment methods may need adjustment to better reflect individual capabilities and contributions, Thomson said, his response representing the first acknowledgement that his leadership approach had been flawed. I'm prepared to implement whatever changes are necessary to ensure fair evaluation and optimal utilization of all squadron personnel. Hayes accepted Thomson's response as the beginning of necessary reforms rather than complete resolution of organizational problems that had developed over months of systematic discrimination. Her approach would focus on institutional changes that addressed underlying cultural issues while providing opportunities for individual growth and professional development. Major, I'm implementing immediate changes to Squadron 47's personnel assignments and evaluation procedures, Hayes announced, her words carrying the authority of command decisions that would reshape the unit's operational structure. Captain Rivera will be assigned to flight leadership positions commensurate with her demonstrated capabilities and experience level. Additionally, all squadron evaluations will be subject to independent review to ensure consistency and objectivity. The changes represented fundamental restructuring of Squadron 47's command hierarchy and operational philosophy. Lucia's elevation to flight leadership would demonstrate institutional commitment to merit-based assignments while providing her with opportunities to fully utilize capabilities that had been systematically suppressed. Foster's reaction to the announced changes revealed the complexity of organizational transformation when established hierarchies and personal relationships were challenged by institutional reform. His position as Thomson's heir apparent had been based on personal loyalty and social connections rather than objective performance measures, and the new emphasis on demonstrated capabilities threatened his advancement prospects. However, Foster's experience during Desert Thunder had provided him with undeniable evidence of Lucia's tactical expertise and leadership potential. His own mission success had depended entirely on her guidance and analytical capabilities, creating personal obligation that transcended squadron politics and professional jealousy. Sir, I want to formally acknowledge Captain Rivera's contributions to our exercise success, Foster announced during the squadron meeting where Hayes's changes were implemented. Her tactical guidance and crisis management capabilities were exceptional, and I believe she deserves recognition and opportunities that reflect her true abilities. Foster's public acknowledgement represented a significant break from the squadron culture that had systematically excluded and undermined Lucia. His willingness to credit her contributions while potentially diminishing his own standing demonstrated exactly the kind of professional maturity and character that would be required for Squadron 47's successful transformation. Webb's response was even more direct and comprehensive in acknowledging the gap between Lucia's treatment and her capabilities. His experience during the emergency landing had provided him with personal evidence of her life-saving tactical expertise while highlighting the injustice of her systematic exclusion from leadership opportunities. Captain Rivera saved my life during Desert Thunder through tactical expertise that exceeded anything I've seen from squadron leadership, Webb stated during his formal debrief with Colonel Hayes. Her guidance was perfect, her analysis was comprehensive, and her willingness to provide assistance despite the treatment she's received demonstrates exactly the kind of character and competence that should be recognized and promoted. Henderson's transformation proved more challenging and complex, reflecting the deeper psychological investment in squadron culture and personal relationships that had shaped his treatment of Lucia. His loyalty to Thomson and commitment to traditional squadron hierarchies had led him to participate in systematic discrimination that violated both military standards and basic professional ethics. The confrontation with obvious evidence of Lucia's capabilities forced Henderson to acknowledge that his behavior had been guided by prejudice rather than professional judgment. His recognition of this reality created internal conflict between personal loyalty and institutional obligations that would require time and effort to resolve completely. "Ma'am, I owe Captain Rivera an apology for my behavior throughout her assignment to Squadron 47, Henderson told Hayes during his individual counseling session. "My treatment of her was unprofessional and unfair, based on assumptions rather than actual performance evaluation. I'm committed to supporting whatever changes are necessary to ensure she receives the respect and opportunities she deserves." Henderson's acknowledgement represented genuine personal growth rather than calculated career positioning. His willingness to accept responsibility for discriminatory behavior while committing to behavioral change demonstrated the kind of character development that would be essential for Squadron 47's cultural transformation. Lucia's response to the dramatic changes in her professional status and recognition reflected the measured professionalism that had sustained her through months of systematic opposition. Rather than expressing triumph or vindication, she focused on the opportunities to contribute more effectively to squadron operations and the development of other personnel who might face similar challenges. "Colonel, I appreciate the confidence you've shown in my capabilities and the opportunities you've provided for expanded responsibilities," Lucia said during her private meeting with Hayes. "My primary goal is to contribute to squadron effectiveness and help create an environment where all personnel can develop their full potential regardless of their background or personal characteristics." Her response demonstrated exactly the kind of leadership philosophy and professional maturity that justified the institutional changes being implemented. Rather than seeking revenge or personal advancement at the expense of former critics, she focused on organizational improvement and collective success that would benefit everyone involved. The broader transformation of Squadron 47's culture required sustained effort and institutional support that extended far beyond individual personnel changes and policy modifications. Hayes implemented comprehensive reforms that included diversity training, revised evaluation procedures, and leadership development programs designed to prevent future discrimination while promoting professional excellence based on objective performance measures. The changes attracted attention throughout the Air Force as an example of successful organizational transformation that addressed systematic discrimination while improving operational effectiveness. Squadron 47's evolution from an exclusive and insular unit to a more inclusive and professionally focused organization became a model for similar reforms in other elite military units. Lucia's elevation to flight commander provided her with the platform necessary to demonstrate leadership capabilities that had been hidden by months of limited opportunities and systematic exclusion. Her approach emphasized technical excellence, tactical innovation, and professional development that elevated the performance of every pilot under her command. Her first major assignment as flight commander involved leading a complex international training exercise with NATO allies that tested exactly the kind of tactical expertise and leadership capabilities she had been developing throughout her military career. The mission's success established her reputation as one of the Air Force's most capable tactical leaders, while validating the institutional changes that had enabled her advancement. Thomson's adaptation to the new organizational structure required fundamental reassessment of his leadership philosophy and personnel management approach. The revelation of his systematic discrimination and its impact on unit effectiveness forced him to acknowledge that his traditional methods were not only unfair but counterproductive to achieving operational excellence. His relationship with Lucia evolved from antagonistic opposition to respectful professional collaboration based on mutual recognition of each other's capabilities and contributions. The transformation was gradual and required sustained effort from both parties, but it ultimately resulted in more effective squadron leadership and improved operational results. 6 months after Desert Thunder, Squadron 47 had achieved performance levels that exceeded their previous records, while developing a reputation for professional excellence and inclusive leadership that attracted the Air Force's most talented pilots regardless of their background or personal characteristics. The unit that had once prided itself on exclusivity had become a model for how diversity and inclusion could enhance rather than compromise military effectiveness. Lucia's impact extended beyond Squadron 47 to influence Air Force policies and training programs designed to identify and develop leadership potential among all personnel. Her example demonstrated that exceptional capabilities could emerge from unexpected sources when institutional barriers were removed and fair evaluation procedures were implemented. The paper tiger had revealed that true strength was not about intimidation or exclusion, but about competence, character, and the courage to serve others, even when that service was not initially recognized or appreciated. Her journey from systematic opposition to respected leadership had transformed not only her own career, but the culture and effectiveness of an entire military unit. Her legacy would continue to influence military aviation and organizational leadership for years to come, inspiring other officers who faced similar challenges while demonstrating that institutional change was possible when leadership had the courage to confront discrimination and embrace the full potential of all personnel. The story of Squadron 47's transformation had become a testament to the power of perseverance, professional excellence, and institutional commitment to fairness and equality. It proved that even the most entrenched organizational cultures could be changed when confronted with undeniable evidence of their failures and leadership, willing to implement necessary reforms. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.